Black Waitress shielded a Hell's Angel from police. Next morning, hundreds of bikers filled her diner. The small town of Cedar Ridge woke slow, like an old dog lifting its head. The sky was pale and quiet. A thin fog sat over Main Street. Neon signs blinked in lazy beats. In the middle of that sleepy street stood a silver and blue diner called the Riverbend Spoon. Inside, a black waitress named Kira Wallace wiped the counter with careful hands. She was young but strong, with calm eyes and a backbone made from long days and longer nights. Bills lived in her apron pocket. Hope lived in her chest. She looked at the door and told herself, "One more day." She did not know that by the next sunrise, people across miles of highway would speak her name, and engines would thunder like a storm outside her windows. She did not know that the story titled Black Waitress Shielded a Hell's Angel from Police. Next morning, hundreds of bikers filled her diner was about to become her life. The hint of trouble started with lights, flashing red and blue that painted the glass, then the chrome coffee machine, then Kira's cheek. The parking lot filled with color like sirens were spilling paint. She heard a door slam, then another. Kira did not move. She set down her tray and breathed. In the far booth sat a man in a black leather jacket with a white-winged skull on the chest. His name was Owen Rook. He looked big and tired, like the world had ridden on his shoulders for too long. His boots were scuffed. His hands shook a little. A hospital band still hugged his wrist. He stared at the coffee she had poured for him and tried to hold steady. Kira saw fear hiding behind the leather and the patch. She had seen that same fear in her own mirror on hard days. Then the door swung open and two officers stepped inside. Sergeant Blake Rowe with a square jaw and cold eyes, and Deputy Carla Finch, younger, watchful, and quiet. Sergeant Rowe scanned the room like he owned the air. "You," he said, pointing at Owen, "stand up. Hands where I can see them." Owen did not jump. He did not argue. He placed his big hands on the table. "I'm just drinking coffee," he said in a low voice. Rowe's hand drifted toward his holster. Deputy Finch said nothing. Kira felt the space tighten, like the whole diner had sucked in a breath and could not breathe out. She stepped from behind the counter. Her shoes made soft sounds on the floor. Her heart banged once, loud, then settled in a steady drum. She moved between the officers and Owen like a door closing against wind. Her hands were empty. Her voice was not. "Sergeant," Kira said, "this is a place for food and people, not for fear. He is my customer." "He is doing nothing wrong," Rowe blinked. Surprise flickered across his face, then a slow heat. "Miss," he said, chewing the word, "you don't want to get in the way of police action." Kira stood taller. "I want to get in the way of harm," she replied. "If you have a warrant, show it. If not, you're scaring a man who has not broken a law." Owen's breath shook. He said, "I got ID." His hand moved, slow as a cloud, toward his wallet. Rowe's thumb pressed hard against the strap of his gun. Kira felt the room tilt. "Stop," she said, firm but gentle. "Please, let me take the ID to you." She lifted the wallet herself, kept it high and flat, and stepped to the counter where the camera above the register could see it all. She opened the wallet with careful fingers and slid the license across the steel. "His name is Owen Rook," she said. "He is from Ridge City. He ordered coffee. He paid. He has a hospital band. Maybe ask why." Rowe looked at the license, then at Owen. "I know that patch," he said. "I have read things, seen things." Kira nodded. "Read the man. See him." Deputy Finch's eyes softened. "Sarge," she murmured, "we can run the name." The radio on Rowe's shoulder crackled. Numbers spoke back. "No wants." "No warrants," the voice said. The room stood still as if the diner itself was listening. Rowe's jaw clenched. He stared at Kira. He stared at Owen. Outside, the red and blue lights kept screaming against the windows, but inside, Kira's voice was steady and low, like a song to a crying child. "He is drinking coffee," she said. "That's all," Rowe snorted. "You people think you can hide trouble with sugar and steam." Kira smiled with no smile at all. "I think we can quiet it long enough to tell the truth." For a heartbeat, the world balanced on the edge of a cup. Then Roe swiped the license back across the counter with a flick, like he was swatting a fly. "We'll be watching," he said. "So will I," Kira answered. He turned. The bells on the door rang with a harsh jangle when he left. Deputy Finch paused, looked at Kira, and gave the smallest nod, a single seed of respect. Then she followed her sergeant into the flashing wash of color. The door closed. The lights outside spun away. Silence dropped on the diner like a blanket, heavy, warm, and a little wet with fear. Kira turned to Owen. He still held the coffee like it was an anchor. His shoulders shook once, then stilled. "I did not come to make trouble," he whispered. Kira poured him a fresh cup. "I know," she said. "Drink while it's hot." The town heard a different version before sunset. Stories travel here like brushfire and like snakes, fast and crooked. By late afternoon, someone had posted grainy phone video. A black waitress standing between a badge and a leather patch, her hands open, her back straight, her voice firm. Comments bloomed on screens. Some called her foolish. Some called her brave. Some used words that belong in dark corners, not in mouths. Kira turned off the sound and kept working. She dropped an extra slice of pie to Mrs. Avery, an old widow with a thin smile. She gave a free refill to Tommy Greer, a teen with calloused hands and shy eyes. She changed the filter in the coffee machine and checked the jar by the register. Tips were thin. Worry was thick. The sun slid down the sky like a heavy plate. The diner lights hummed. Kira washed her hands, scrubbing away grease and fear both. She moved on muscle memory. She cleaned until the steel shone. She took the trash out back, and when she came in again, Owen was gone. His mug sat empty, and under it lay money enough for 3 coffees and a folded paper napkin. On the napkin he had written, "Thank you for seeing a person." Night fell. The parking lot turned into a black mirror. The sky filled with faint stars, quiet and far. Kira closed early. She stood alone in the stillness, looking at the napkin. Her throat felt tight like new shoes. She thought of her mother, Janelle Wallace, who used to say, "We do not choose who walks in here. We choose how we meet them." She thought of her father, Lewis, lying in a small room at home, fighting sickness that ate money and time. She turned off the neon sign, locked the door, and rested her forehead against the cool glass. "One more day," she whispered again. Wind moved the bushes. Somewhere down the road, a single engine coughed and settled. She did not know that in the dark beyond Cedar Ridge, phones buzzed on nightstands from city to city, and riders with sore hands and strong hearts were texting 2 words to each other, "The spoon." Before sunrise, the world began to hum. It did not start loud. It started like a long, low B. Kira stood in her tiny kitchen, stirring oatmeal for her father and making eggs for herself. She wore her work shoes and her blue bandana. She brushed her father's hand. "I'll be back by 5, she told him. He blinked a slow blink that meant, "I love you." Kira kissed his cheek and left. The streets were gray and empty. She unlocked the diner. She set the chairs down. She pulled the blinds up. She prepped the line. She poured the first pot. The hum grew. It walked across the sky and down the hill. It crawled up the windows and under the door. It set the spoons to trembling in their tin. Kira paused. Her chest did that fast, slow thing again. She stepped to the window. Engines. First 10, then 20, then more. Chrome flashed like strips of sunlight. Jackets gleamed like beetle shells after rain. Rows and rows of bikes rolled into the lot. Some were black as midnight. Some were candy apple red. Some had little flags snapping. The riders cut the engines, and the silence that followed felt like a mountain falling into a lake. Then doors swung open. Boots hit pavement. People laughed and clapped each other on the back. A few hugged. A few wiped their eyes, quick and secret. At the front of the line stood a tall woman with a silver braid and a patch that read Road Watch, and beside her a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his chin and a kind mouth. The silver-haired woman pushed open the diner door. The bell sang. She looked at Kira and said, "Morning, ma'am. Name's Mara Vale. We heard what you did. We came for breakfast." Kira blinked. "All of you?" she asked, half laughing, half crying already. Mara smiled. As many as your griddle can handle, and then some. We'll rotate. The big man stepped in, removed his gloves, and offered his hand. Dax Holloway, he said. I rode with Owen when we were young. He sent a message. Said, she stood. That was enough. More riders filed in, women and men, old and young. Tattoos, freckles, scars, soft eyes. Kira moved on instinct. Welcome to the Riverbend Spoon, she said. Coffee is hot. Pancakes are real. Pie is honest. The room chuckled and eased. They spread out in the booths and at the counter. They stacked helmets in neat pyramids by the door. They treated the space like a church, a garage, and a grandmother's kitchen all at once. The diner shook like thunder, like the hint said it would. Forks clinked. Syrup poured. Bacon hissed. Some riders ate in heavy quiet, like they had traveled through long nights and hard memories. Some told soft jokes. One man cried into his napkin and blamed the onions. Kira filled mugs and plates and hearts as fast as she could. Eliza, her teen helper, showed up early with messy hair and big eyes. We got a town in here, she said. We got a family, Kira answered. The tip jar filled with crumpled bills and folded 20s. A small line formed at the register, and each person tried to pay for more than they ate. Kira pushed some money back. Pay it forward, she said. They shook their heads and paid anyway. Dax slipped an envelope under the counter. From the chapter, he whispered. No press, no strings, just thanks. Inside was enough to push back the red stamps on Kira's bills to buy a new coffee grinder, to fix the humming fridge. Not everyone liked the rumble. Some townsfolk stood across the street with tight mouths and crossed arms. Mrs. Pritchard, who sells flowers near the church, frowned. Mayor Collins watched from his truck. And then, like a bad echo, the red and blue lights came back. Kira felt the air go thin. The door flew open. Sergeant Rowe entered, his shoulders pulled up with pride and fear. Deputy Finch followed, close but cooler. What is this? Rowe barked. A rally? A threat? Mara Vale stood slowly, her hands open at her sides. Breakfast, she said. Dax shifted, but Kira touched his sleeve and stepped forward. Her apron was dotted with coffee and flour. Her voice was steady. Sergeant, she said, you are welcome if you're hungry. But you will not make war in my diner. Rowe swept a hard look over the patches and the leather and the helmets. I won't have a gang take over this town. A thin, trembling voice rose from a booth. It was Mr. Hollow, a retired school janitor who came for pie every Thursday. They paid for my breakfast, he said. They asked me about my old dog. Rowe ignored him. His hand hovered near his belt. The room tightened. Dax took a breath big enough to lift a truck, then let it out slow. Mara did not move. Deputy Finch looked at Kira like a person asking a safe driver to take the wheel. Kira nodded once and faced Rowe head-on. Yesterday, she said, you saw a patch before you saw a person. Today, see what I see. See people eating. See people crying a little because they found a place to set their hurt down for a minute. Rowe's throat bobbed. He looked at the wall, where old photos showed Cedar Ridge losing and winning small battles for years. He looked at the window, where the morning sun made the chrome outside look like water. A sound cut through the heat. The doorbell jingled small and sweet. Owen Rook stepped in. He looked cleaner today. The hospital band was gone. His eyes were still tired, but they held a new light. Behind him walked a girl with a pale scarf over her head and a bright smile. This is June, Owen said softly. My daughter. She wanted to thank the lady who made her dad feel safe. The room shifted. The bikers turned in their seats like steel flowers. Townsfolk on the sidewalk edged closer to the glass. Rowe's jaw opened, then closed, like he had to pick a new line and did not know how. June stepped up to Kira and handed her a small paper bag. We made muffins, she said. They're not pretty, but they're sweet. Kira's hands shook as she took them. They look perfect, she answered. June hugged her like they had been friends forever. Turning point after turning point rolled like waves. The first had been the stand in the light of sirens. The second was the roar of morning engines and the flood of leather and kindness. The third was smaller and stronger, a sick girl's arms around a waitress's waist and a whole room choosing to be quiet so they could hear each other breathe. Sergeant Rowe stared at the hug like it was a language he had never learned. His shoulders dropped a little. He looked at Deputy Finch, who lifted her chin in a tiny nod that said, "Try." Rowe cleared his throat. "Miss Wallace," he said, the title softening. "My job is to keep Cedar Ridge safe. Sometimes I swing too hard. Sometimes I don't listen." He glanced at Owen. "You got no warrants. You got a kid who needs calm. I can make room for that." The diner did not clap. It did not cheer. It just released a breath it had held for hours. Kira poured a cup for Rowe and set it on the counter. "It's better hot," she said. He nodded and took a seat at the far end like a student sent to think. Deputy Finch stood near the door, arms lightly crossed but her face open now, not shut. Mara Vale signaled and riders began to rotate, some leaving to let others sit, some stepping outside to share stories on the curb with old men from the hardware store, some walking to the churchyard to help Mrs. Pritchard carry heavy buckets. A few teenagers from the high school wandered over and asked careful questions about bikes and roads and safety. Dax taught a kid named Leo how to tie a better knot in his bootlace. Eliza drew a chalk line on the pavement and turned it into a balance game for a little girl named Ruby. It looked like a street fair without the tents. It looked like a Sunday without a sermon. By noon, the mayor came in, hat in hand. "Miss Wallace," he said, "seems you got yourself a festival." Kira smiled. "Seems we got ourselves a neighborhood." He scratched his jaw. "Town's been rough lately," he admitted. "Factory closed. Folks scared. Fear makes big shadows." He looked around at the riders and the townspeople mixing like paint. Maybe we needed a loud breakfast. Kira set a plate of pancakes in front of him without asking. He laughed and sat down next to a rider with a purple braid and a tiny dog in her vest. Kira took a second, just a heartbeat, to lean against the counter and look. It was messy in the best way. It was noisy in the kind way. She felt something in her chest unclench, like a knot had been worried by warm fingers until it loosened. Afternoon brought a soft rain. Drops tapped the bikes and slid into small rivers along the curb. People moved closer inside, shoulder to shoulder. Someone started a song low, and someone else found the harmony. June sat on a stool, eating a muffin from the bag she had brought, and told Eliza that she loved blueberry anything. Owen drank coffee slowly, like prayer. Sergeant Rowe finished his cup and stood. He came to the counter and left money enough for 5 meals. "For whoever needs it," he said. Kira nodded. They looked at each other like two people who might try again. Deputy Finch bought a pie and carried it out to share with the line of kids who had formed near the door because the rain made them want sugar. When the riders began to leave, they did not roar away all at once. They left in 2s and 3s, after hugs and handshakes and promises to come back. Each goodbye felt like a thread tied instead of cut. Mara Vale waited until the end. She placed a small patch on the counter. No skulls, no fire. Just plain white letters on black that read, "Friend." "Sew it inside your apron if you want," Mara said. "No one has to see it but you. It just means, we remember." Kira turned the patch over in her palm like a smooth stone. "I'll keep it safe," she said. Mara smiled. "You already know how." Evening rolled in, gentle and gold. The rain stopped. The last bike pulled away with a soft wave. The diner was quiet again, but it did not feel empty. It felt full the way a field feels full after harvest. Used, blessed, ready for rest. Kira wiped the counter slow. She could still hear the small music of forks and laughter in the corners. Owen came to the register, hat in his hands. "Thank you," he said, and the words were bigger than 2 words. "June says your pancakes are better than mine." Kira grinned. "She is a generous liar." They both laughed. Owen grew serious. "We will come back on good days," he said. "Not just the hard ones." Kira touched her apron where the patch now warmed the cloth. "You are welcome," she said. "You are safe." When she finally flipped the sign to closed, the sky had gone a soft blue-black. Kira walked out and locked the door. She stood on the step and lifted her face to the cool air. Across the street, Mrs. Pritchard stuck a small bouquet into the gap in her shop's brick and waved. Kira waved back. The mayor drove by, slow, tipped his hat, and kept going. A few kids drew chalk hearts on the sidewalk where the balance line had been. Kira listened to the quiet. It was not the same quiet as yesterday. It was the kind that follows good noise, like a song resting after the last note. She placed her hand on the glass and closed her eyes. "We did it," she whispered, and she meant we in the biggest way. At home, her father was awake. He looked at her as if she had grown taller. She sat on the edge of his bed and told him the day in simple pieces. The engines, the pancakes, the muffins from June, the word friend, the way Sergeant Rowe set money on the counter like he was putting down a heavy thing. Lewis smiled and tapped his chest. She knew what he meant. Pride. He had taught her to stand without shouting and to speak without shaking. She held his hand and watched him fall asleep. Then she took the envelope Dax had left, paid the worst of the bills online, and cried a little with relief in the blue light of the screen. That night, before she slept, Kira wrote on a clean index card and pinned it near the back door of the diner so she would see it every morning. See the person first. Under that, she wrote a second line. Feed the brave. She thought of the title again and saw it, not as a headline, but as a promise kept. Black Waitress shielded a Hell's Angel from police. Next morning, hundreds of bikers filled her diner. She had stepped forward with only her voice and her courage. The cops had frozen. A brotherhood had moved. An army had arrived hungry and left grateful. She had tried to save one man and found that love multiplies when it is handed out on plates with warm edges. In Cedar Ridge, the story did not end with the engines. It went on in small ways. Mrs. Avery got rides to the clinic from 2 riders who lived out near the county line. Tommy Greer found a job at a repair shop owned by a woman with grease under her nails and a laugh like sunshine. Deputy Finch came in for coffee on her days off and learned the names of the regulars the way Kira knew them, by what pie they liked and how they took their tea. Once a month, Mara Vale sent a postcard from a different road with a picture of a sky too big to hold, and on the back she wrote, "Breakfast when we circle through," and Kira wrote back, "Always." As for Sergeant Rowe, he did not change all at once. People don't, but he changed enough. He listened more. He learned to pause before he put his hand on his belt. He took a class on de-escalation at the county. He sat at the counter sometimes and asked Kira about the coffee beans and the weather, which is how men like him practice saying, "Help me be better," without saying it out loud. Kira met him there. She would not forget the past, but she would not let it own the future. She put sugar on the counter in a clean jar and kept the lid easy to open. On the 1-year mark, the riders came back by the dozens. They did not make a big speech. They did not need to. June walked in first, taller now, scarf traded for a cap. She carried a cake shaped like a wheel. Owen carried a bouquet made of wildflowers with a little tag that said, "For the woman who made a space for breath." Kira hugged them both. The room filled up again, gentle thunder, but this time the town did not stand across the street. It came inside. People sat together who thought they never would. A teacher and a tattoo artist swapped book lists. A preacher and a mechanic argued kindly about the best road out of the county for watching sunsets. The mayor ate 2 pancakes and told everyone not to tell his wife. Laughter stirred the air like wind in tall grass. Late that night, after the last dish was dried and the lights were off, Kira stood alone one more time. She touched the patch in her apron. She looked out over the empty booths and saw them full again in her mind. The quiet man, the brave child, the loud friend, the careful cop, the soft singer, the tired father, the patient widow, the hungry boys, the smiling girl with the purple braid, and the tiny dog. She felt the weight of the day settle into a steady warmth. She unlocked the back door and stepped into the cool dark. The stars shone a little brighter than before, or maybe she was just looking harder. Either way, the night felt kind. And so the story that began with flashes of red and blue found its end in softer colors. Silver spoons, golden pancakes, brown hands steady on a white mug, black leather jackets warming in the sun, and the blue of a sky bigger than fear. If someone asked Kira what it all meant, she would say, "It means we saw each other, and that is why we are still here." She would say that sometimes you think you are saving one person with nothing but your voice and your courage, and then you learn that your voice carries farther than you knew, and your courage builds bridges you cannot see until you cross them. She would say that a diner can be a door, and a breakfast can be a banner, and kindness can call an army to lay down its armor and pick up forks. Title repeated for closing. As promised, in a quiet town called Cedar Ridge, a black waitress took one step forward and made a whole world move. And that is why they still tell the story called Black Waitress Shielded a Hell's Angel from Police. Next morning, hundreds of bikers filled her diner.